Bidders come looking for Star Entertainment. The local share market comes close to a record high. And Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on high alert over the unrest in New Caledonia. Welcome to Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. It is Tuesday, the 21st of May, 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, after the show, you have an interview coming up with, he's often one of my favourite guests. I mean, of all the two occasions that he's spoken to us on this podcast. Bruce Wolpe, a senior fellow, non-resident at the United States Studies Centre.
Yeah, so Bruce is a lovely fella. He is American by birth. He has worked in the Obama administration. He also worked in Juliet Gillard's office for a while there as well. So probably tells you where his leaning is in politics. But he really is an expert on the US political system. So we talked to him about Joe Biden, why no one wants to vote for Joe Biden, Donald Trump, why he can still be successful notwithstanding his different legal woes. And in the end, I say, so who's going to win, Bruce? And he lets me know who he thinks is going to win. So it's a great chat.
Yeah, it certainly is. It is well worth a listen. It's coming up after the show. And a quick reminder as well, Sean, that tomorrow is Wednesday, which is newsletter day. Fear and Greed newsletter is out every Wednesday morning, comes out mid-morning. So you still have time. You still have just over 24 hours to head along to fearandgreed.com.au, put your email address in, sign up, get the newsletter every Wednesday. Costs you absolutely nothing. And you get in exchange all of Sean's opinions. Really not selling that, am I?
No, I do get one thing about the newsletter. I get to say what I think, not just tell the news, much more opinion in the newsletter.
Do you know yet what you're teeing off on in tomorrow's newsletter?
I got some ideas. I'll just keep that to myself, though.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're really teasing us with this. So head along to fearandgreed.com.au and sign up for the newsletter. It is going to be well worth it to hear Sean's unleashed opinions on a whole bunch of topics. But on with the show, Sean, the main story this morning. Star Entertainment is considering an approach from a group of investors led by Hard Rock Hotels and Resorts, which might provide a last-minute lifeline to the ailing gaming company.
Star's share price jumped 18% yesterday after it confirmed it had received inbound interest, is how it put it, from several parties regarding potential transactions, one of which included Hard Rock Hotel and Resorts. Under the proposal, Star would be rebranded Hard Rock, according to the Financial Review. The Florida-based Hard Rock operates more than a dozen casinos, including the Mirage in Las Vegas. The Star operates in Sydney, Brisbane and the Gold Coast, and of course is in the midst of a second inquiry into whether it should keep its licence in its home state of New South Wales. The company could be stripped of that licence, and therefore it won't be able to operate its gaming floors in New South Wales or Queensland. It also faces a fine from AUSTRAC, which has accused Star of serious and systemic non-compliance with anti-money laundering laws. Star released a statement yesterday that said the inquiries thus far haven't resulted in substantive discussions.
Sean, I suppose the big question is if Hard Rock or some other large gaming group got involved, it doesn't have to be Hard Rock, would that improve Star's chance of actually kind of holding on to its license?
It's a bit hard to say, but helping is the fact that the US-based gaming groups, such as Hard Rock, have already gone through fairly rigorous vetting in their home country, and you'd hope that they would have practices and processes in place to address some of the issues that Star is facing. Certainly, if you want to buy a casino in Australia, now is a pretty good time to do it. Before yesterday, Star was trading near all-time lows, and while it had a market capitalisation of well over $1 billion, it's about $1.5 billion after yesterday's big jump in its share price, it is still a high-risk proposition. It still faces big questions over whether it will get its licence back. There's the potential for those big fines. So the purchase cost could well be well below $1 billion. I mean, some analysts are talking about $500 million. Hence, if you want to pick up and take on that risk, it's probably a pretty cheap asset at the moment. Also, if you think about Crown Resorts, it's owned by private equity group Blackstone. It cut 1,000 jobs across its 3 casinos earlier in the month. Times are a bit tough for the industry, so quite apart from the licensing issues, the anti-money laundering issues, it's also just not a great environment at the moment for gaming companies. What I suppose this really does show is that there is a way out of this current mess for Star that isn't it trading its own way out. I mean, a purchase from one of these big guys, particularly if you brought the Hard Rock name to Sydney, could make a real difference. So I think this is going to be fascinating to watch. Obviously, it's fairly early in these talks, but, where there's smoke, Michael, there tends to be fire.
And Sean, it is just another chapter, isn't it? In what has been the Star story has just been remarkable to watch over the last few years in terms of all of the money laundering allegations and the organised crime and the inquiries and the ongoing saga. And here we have kind of Hard Rock and the potential for one of those giant guitars to be mounted on top of the Star Casino in Sydney. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Exactly. I remember some time when I was a child, he says, I was probably a teenager, and the Hard Rock opened in Sydney, I think it was. And it was one of those streets in East Sydney, and there was a big guitar. And I remember coming down from the country, and as a family, we went for a drive past the Hard Rock to see it. We were so excited that the Hard Rock had come to Australia. Now, I don't know when that was, and it obviously didn't work because it's no longer there. But one of my great early memories of childhood.
It is really quite iconic. I just think it's exciting, and it actually brings a bit of kind of almost celebrity now to this story that just keeps on giving.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, turning to local markets, what happened yesterday?
The local share market moved within 23 points of its record high yesterday, touching 7,874 points before finishing up just over 0.5% for the day. Now, so it closed at 7,863.7 points. That means it's 33 points off its record close, which is 7,896.4. Point in all that, almost at a peak. The energy and materials sectors were the best performers, with BHP, Santos and Woodside all closing up around 2%, while Rio Tinto finished 3% higher. The rally in the miners came amid a big jump in metals prices. More on that shortly. The gold stocks also did well, with Evolution Mining, Gold Road Resources and Regis performing well. The laggards, including CSL, Wesfarmers, Goodman Group, Woolies, Transurban, WiseTech Global and Telstra. I feel bad saying that. Yesterday was just a good day in the market, so I'd then go and list all these poor performers, Michael. But yeah, generally things were pretty good yesterday.
Yeah. Let's give kind of credit where credit is due. The market did pretty well.
It did do very well. Absolutely.
International markets. What's happening there?
Markets in the local region basically benefiting from stimulus measures in China to prop up the ailing property market. Beijing removed the floor on mortgage rates and encouraged local governments to buy homes to convert them into affordable housing. We talked about that late last week. It's helped markets more generally. Certainly the big miners on the back of stronger iron ore prices, but other metals have risen as well. Copper hit a new record yesterday of $10,848 a tonne, beating the previous high set back in March 2022. Nickel surged 7%. That's following the outbreak of riots in New Caledonia. New Caledonia is actually a key supplier of nickel in the region. Gold hit a new record, $2,440.59 an ounce. That's on the back of hopes that interest rates in the US are on the way down. The Aussie dollar is buying around 67 US cents. So a lot of movement in markets yesterday.
I had no idea about New Caledonia and nickel.
No, nor did I until yesterday.
Oh, I know we'll talk more about New Caledonia shortly, but I've learned something.
I mean, nickel at the moment is not a great commodity to be an exporter of because there's a flood of it on the market and its prices have really come off. Still, I mean, it got a bump yesterday.
Okay. All right. There is a bit to get through today, Sean. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the Australian Defence Force is ready to fly in to rescue hundreds of Australians who are trapped in New Caledonia amid riots when it is permitted to do so.
Violent protests have broken out in the French-controlled South Pacific Territory amid plans to change voting rules, with at least 6 people killed and many others injured. There are 300 Australians registered with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade who want to leave the island after the international airport was closed and roads were blockaded by authorities, according to a report in The Australian. Mr Albanese urged those needing rescue to contact a 24-hour emergency support line and said troops were actively waiting to provide assistance once they're granted access into the territory. That's the key point there. Mr Albanese said Australia had been in contact with New Zealand to discuss next steps for citizens who are trapped in the territory and flagged that Air Force planes were waiting on standby.
Agribusiness Elders has announced its worst profit in a decade after farmers sold off cattle herds fearful of extended hot and dry conditions.
Elders' profit fell 76% to under $12 million for the 6 months to the end of March, and boss Mark Allison in part blamed it on an incorrect prediction of El Nino weather conditions. Now, the Bureau of Meteorology last year warned about these conditions, and it triggered the sale of livestock. Farmers heard the news. They thought it's going to be hot and dry. I'm going to get rid of my livestock now. Anyway, it didn't really eventuate. But because the farmers didn't have the livestock, they didn't go to Elders to buy all their supplies. That's kind of what happened. Mr. Allison said the disappointing 6 months was a one-off. Livestock markets have started to recover. Elders, of course, had warned of the profit downgrade, and after yesterday's announcement and Mr. Allison's comments, the stock actually rose more than 1%.
Now, this is an interesting one, Sean. The share price of Nuix jumped 25% yesterday after the software group said it would beat its target revenue growth of 10% this financial year.
The group surprised everyone with an unscheduled trading update after it said it had signed a multi-year contract with an undisclosed customer. Yesterday's surge is some relief from shareholders, but they needed it. They've seen the value of the company fall by about 70% since listing. Nuix is still awaiting a federal court judgment over allegations by the Australian Securities and Investments Commission that it misled the market in the wake of its IPO. The company denies those claims. We'll hear about that in the next couple of months. Investors yesterday would be somewhat relieved that there was some movement in upwards direction of its share price.
Speaking of big moves in share prices, Sean, jewellery retailer Michael Hill's share price tumbled 23% yesterday after it warned of a slump in sales.
The group said positive sales momentum had been expected through the second half in line with anticipated improvements in consumer sentiment and economic conditions. But, alas, that hadn't materialised. While the business in Australia is doing okay, the New Zealand operations are the most challenging. It went on to give a couple of reasons for the decline in sales. I thought they were really fascinating. One of them is a fall in consumer credit approval rates across New Zealand. So people buying jewellery are taking out loans to do it. They're not getting approved for credit, therefore they can't buy. The second one was an increase in serious retail crime events impacting a number of its stores. Isn't that fascinating?
So what, in terms of like shoplifting?
I presume so.
But everything's under glass.
I don't know how they do it.
Oh, no, I
Be interesting.
suppose it's one of those ones where you go in and say, look, can I try on like 5 rings at once?
Can I get 5 most expensive rings in the place? Can I just try them on?
One on each finger, thanks.
And off we go.
Yeah, it's just like, when you're in Payless shoes and you're trying on your shoes and you take them for a quick walk to test them out and you never go back. Take your rings for a walk.
But what you do is leave a lovely pair of old runners that you had for 3.5 years.
It's a fair trade. It's called a trade-in. Yeah.
Oh, dear. Anyway, the chief executive of Michael Hill International, Daniel Bracken, said consumer discretionary spend, and the fine jewellery category in particular, remained under pressure due to macroeconomic forces.
Just need to make it crystal clear that I have never actually done that.
I'm wondering about that. That just came, straight from the heart. That did. And I thought, oh, Michael.
Yeah, no.
Keep that one to yourself.
And I know I went into a lot of detail, but it's the fiction writer in me, Sean. I think. I promise you I haven't done it. Goodness me. All right. Now we better move on because I've got to get to international news because there is a big story that has been the subject of worldwide coverage over the last 24 hours. Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi, the country's foreign minister, and other officials have died after their helicopter crashed in the mountainous northwest reaches of Iran.
The helicopter went down in dense fog, which complicated subsequent search efforts. Mr. Raisi, a conservative who violently crushed dissent, was widely viewed as a possible successor to Iran's supreme leader. Iran, under Mr. Raisi and supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, launched a drone and missile attack on Israel last month. Under his rule, uranium enrichment had progressed to near weapons-grade levels. The economy, though, has struggled. There's been all sorts of unrest, particularly over women's rights and things like that. It does leave a power vacuum now in that nation at a time when the Middle East is certainly in a tenuous state.
Sean, new COVID-19 variants are spreading around the world and stoking fears of a surge in cases over the northern summer in the latest sign of the infectious disease's ability to mutate and potentially threaten collective immunity.
So it's called, the latest mutation is called KP.2. It's one of the so-called flirt variants, FL, capital F, capital L, small I, capital R, capital T, flirt variants.
Flirt.
They've become the dominant coronavirus strain in the US since first emerging in March. In the 2 weeks to May 11, KP.2 accounted for nearly 28% of cases, up from under 4% just 2 weeks ago. So clearly very, very contagious. That's according to the latest data from the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. 4.5 years after the outbreak of the pandemic, caseloads in the US have in recent months actually fallen close to record lows, according to the Financial Times. But while many infectious disease experts don't expect a big surge in hospital admissions, this new cluster of variants could well drive a huge surge in summer infections.
One last one, Sean. Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin has resumed sending tourists to space, launching 6 private passengers on a short flight more than 60 miles above the Earth over the weekend.
This one's for you. The passengers included Ed Dwight, a former Air Force captain who was selected as the first black astronaut candidate in 1961, but never got to fly to space with NASA. The flight was Blue Origin's first tourist mission on New Shepard since August 2022. The company was forced to halt flights of that rocket type after a New Shepard vehicle suffered an engine failure mid-flight during an uncrewed mission in September of 2022. Blue Origin spent most of last year investigating the failure and making design corrections. The company had successfully returned to flight with another uncrewed mission in December. Now you can be a space tourist again with Blue Origin.
Are we going to talk about the shape of the Blue Origin ships, Sean?
I don't know about me. I'm quite happy to let it go, but go for it.
You know what they remind me of? Something out of Austin Powers. Remember how there's like the suspicious kind of space object caught on the radar?
Yeah.
It feels like it's the kind of thing that if you asked like a 14-year-old boy to design a space, a rocket, he would design something like this. And that's what it looks like.
Righto. It's not just a 14-year-old boy. It's like a mid-30s podcaster as well. I think.
Yeah. It's a very mature 38-year-old as well. Anyway, look, I'll leave that one with you, and I can guarantee you right now there will be listeners just doing a sneaky little Google image search of the Blue Origin rockets just to see that I am correct. And if you agree with me, please let us know. Obviously, you can do that kind of privately and anonymously. Up next, Sean, here I'm trying to kind of regain some dignity now. You have an excellent interview with Bruce Wolpe, who is an expert on all things US from the United States Studies Centre.
Yeah, we talked to him about what's going to happen this year in the election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, why Americans don't like Joe Biden, why Americans are still going to vote for Donald Trump, who he thinks will win the election. Well worth listening.
It is a great chat. It's coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au, which is also where you can sign up for the Fear and Greed newsletter, which comes out tomorrow. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Tuesday, the 21st of May, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.